The wind howled like a hungry wolf as a stagecoach rattled into Redemption. Dust devils danced in the deserted streets, mirroring the swirling uncertainty that clung to the town like a shroud. Redemption was a place where dreams went to die, a forgotten speck on the map ruled by a man with a smile as sharp as a broken bottle, Mayor Silas. But tonight, hope arrived in the form of Lucky Leo. Leo wasn't just any gambler. He was a legend whispered in smoky saloons from the Mississippi to the Pacific. They said he could charm the cards themselves. That luck clung to him like a second skin. He stepped off the stagecoach, a figure cloaked in shadow and intrigue. His eyes, the color of polished jade, scanned the desolate scene. He adjusted his worn leather gloves, a subtle gesture that betrayed the steel beneath his charming exterior. Leo had heard whispers of redemption, of its hard-working people ground under the heel of a corrupt mayor. He wasn't a saint, not by a long shot, but something about the injustice in this forgotten town pricked his conscience. Besides, a high-stakes game against a crooked politician, that was a temptation even Lucky Leo couldn't resist. He strolled into the only saloon still open, the Golden Gulch, its flickering lamplight casting long, dancing shadows. The air was thick with stale beer and desperation. He saw Silas holding court at a corner table, surrounded by his cronies, their faces etched with greed and arrogance. Leo knew, in that instant, that he'd found his mark. Redemption might be down on its luck, but Lucky Leo was about to deal a new hand. Redemption wasn't always this bleak. Once, it had been a bustling hub for miners and ranchers, a place where fortunes were made and dreams took flight. But those days were long gone, buried beneath layers of dust and despair. The silver mines had dried up, the cattle ranches struggled under drought, and the railway had bypassed Redemption, leaving it stranded like a ship without a sail. Mayor Silas, with his slicked-back hair and even slicker promises, had capitalized on the town's misfortune. He'd bought up failing businesses for pennies on the dollar, manipulated land deals to his advantage, and squeezed the townsfolk dry with taxes and fees. He controlled everything: the bank, the general store, even the water supply. Anyone who dared to speak out against him found themselves facing mysterious accidents or sudden departures. The townsfolk lived in fear, their hope dwindling with each passing day. They patched their clothes, tightened their belts, and prayed for a miracle. The Golden Gulch Saloon, despite its faded grandeur, was one of the few places where they could temporarily forget their troubles, drowning their sorrows in cheap whiskey and tall tales. But even there, Silas's presence loomed large, his watchful eyes ensuring no dissent brewed beneath the surface. Children played in the dirt streets, their laughter muted, their faces prematurely aged with worry. The schoolhouse stood empty, the teacher having left months ago, unable to bear the weight of the town's despair. Even the church bells, once a symbol of hope and community, remained silent, their chimes replaced by the mournful sigh of the wind. Redemption was a town on its knees, waiting for a savior, or perhaps a final push into oblivion. And now, Lucky Leo had arrived. Leo took a seat at the bar, ordering a whiskey neat. He watched Silas, a spider in his web, as the mayor collected taxes from a trembling shopkeeper, pocketing a significant portion before handing the rest to his burly enforcer, a man known only as Brick. The scene played out like a twisted morality play, the powerful preying on the weak. Later, Leo witnessed Silas evicting a family from their home, a dilapidated shack on the edge of town. The family, their faces etched with despair, pleaded with Silas, but their words fell on deaf ears. Brick tossed their meager belongings into the street, while Silas watched with a cold, detached amusement. Leo clenched his fist, his jaw tight. This wasn't just corruption, it was cruelty. That evening, as the Golden Gulch filled with weary souls seeking solace, Leo approached Silas's table. "Mayor," he said, his voice smooth as velvet, "I couldn't help but notice your generous contributions to the town's economy." Silas looked up, his eyes narrowing. "And who might you be, stranger?" "Just a traveler passing through," Leo replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. but I've always been a believer in fair play. And what I've seen here, well, it doesn't strike me as particularly fair." Silas chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "Fairness is a luxury this town can't afford. Besides, what's it to you?" "Maybe," Leo said, leaning closer, "I'd like to make it my business." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "I propose a game, Mayor. A game of poker. High stakes. Winner takes all." Silas's eyes gleamed with avarice. "And what exactly do you have to offer, stranger? I doubt you can match my resources." Leo smiled, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Oh, Mayor," he said, "you'd be surprised." The air in the Golden Gulch crackled with anticipation. News of the impending poker game spread like wildfire through Redemption. The townsfolk, starved for hope, huddled in small groups, whispering about Lucky Leo and his audacity to challenge Silas. Silas, never one to back down from a perceived challenge, especially one that promised to line his pockets even further, accepted Leo's proposal with a predatory grin. "All right, stranger," he said, his voice dripping with false joviality. "Let's see what you've got. But be warned, I don't play for pennies." The stakes were set. Everything Silas owned, the bank, the general store, the deeds to the land, even the town itself, all against every dollar Leo possessed, plus a series of IOUs that hinted at a vast, unseen fortune. The game would be held the following night, in the back room of the Golden Gulch, a room usually reserved for Silas's private, less-than-legal dealings. As Leo prepared for the game, he sought out information about Silas's playing style. He learned that Silas was a ruthless player, prone to bluffing and intimidation, but also predictable in his patterns. He also discovered that Silas had a tell, a slight twitch in his left eye whenever he held a strong hand. Meanwhile, Silas, confident in his own abilities and his home field advantage, dismissed Leo as a foolhardy gambler who was about to learn a painful lesson. He gathered his cronies, Brick and a shifty-eyed accountant named Worm, to ensure the game was fair, meaning rigged in his favor. Redemption held its breath, waiting to see if Lucky Leo could truly live up to his name. The fate of the town hung in the balance, resting on the turn of card. The back room of the Golden Gulch was thick with cigar smoke and nervous energy. A single oil lamp cast long, distorted shadows on the faces gathered around the poker table. Silas sat at one end, flanked by Brick and Worm, his expression a mask of smug confidence. Leo sat opposite him, his eyes calm and focused, his presence radiating an unsettling serenity. The game began slowly, cautiously. Small bets, probing questions, a careful dance of deception and observation. Silas tried to intimidate Leo with aggressive raises and boastful pronouncements, but Leo remained unfazed, his face an impassive mask. He folded when necessary, called when he sensed weakness, and raised only when he knew he had the advantage. As the hours passed, the stakes grew higher, the tension more palpable. Silas began to sweat, his confidence slowly eroding as Leo chipped away at his pile of cash. Brick and Worm exchanged worried glances, their plans for a rigged game thwarted by Leo's uncanny ability to anticipate Silas's moves. Several times, Leo was down to his last chips, seemingly on the verge of defeat. But each time he managed to pull off a miraculous comeback, drawing the right card at the right moment, his luck defying all odds. The townsfolk, who had gathered outside the saloon, pressed their ears against the walls, listening for any sign of how the game was progressing. Hope flickered in their hearts, fueled by Leo's resilience. The turning point came late in the night. With Silas holding what he believed to be an unbeatable hand, he pushed all his remaining chips into the pot, declaring, "This is it, stranger. Your luck ends here." Leo, his face unreadable, simply smiled and said, "I'll see your bet and raise you the town." A collective gasp filled the back room. Silas's eyes widened in disbelief. "You wouldn't," he stammered, his bravado momentarily shattered. Leo simply raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Wouldn't I? You seem to have forgotten. Mayor, I'm a gambler. And this is the biggest gamble of my life. Silas, trapped by his own arrogance, couldn't back down. He called Leo's bet, his hand trembling as he laid down his cards. A full house, kings over queens. A seemingly unbeatable hand. Leo paused, a dramatic silence hanging in the air. He slowly reached for his own cards, revealing them one by one. A 2 of clubs, a 7 of diamonds, a 10 of spades, a jack of hearts, and finally, a queen of hearts. A straight flush. A stunned silence descended upon the room. Silas stared at Leo's hand, his face turning a mottled shade of purple. Brick and Worm looked on in disbelief, their carefully laid plans reduced to ashes. Leo reached across the table, gently pulling the deed to redemption towards him. "Looks like I win, Mayor," he said, his voice calm and even. The townsfolk, who had been holding their breath outside, erupted in cheers. They surged into the Golden Gulch, their faces beaming with joy and relief. Silas, defeated and humiliated, was quickly surrounded by the very people he had oppressed for so long. He sputtered and cursed, but his words were drowned out by the jubilant cries of the townsfolk. Lucky Leo, the notorious gambler, had won redemption. The town, once on the brink of collapse, now had a new owner, a new hope, and a new chance at life. But as Leo surveyed the cheering crowd, a sense of unease settled over him. Winning the town was one thing, but running it, that was a whole different game. And he had a feeling this game would be far more dangerous than any poker hand he had ever played. The morning after the poker game dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the darkness that had gripped redemption for so long. The townsfolk, still buzzing with excitement, gathered in the town square, eager to see their new owner. Leo emerged from the Golden Gulch, looking weary but determined. He climbed onto a makeshift stage, addressing the crowd with a simple, heartfelt speech. "I know I'm just a gambler," he said, his voice carrying across the square, "but I promise you this. I'll do my best to make redemption a place you can be proud of again." The crowd roared its approval, their hope renewed. But as Leo spoke, he noticed something amiss. The town square, though filled with cheering faces, was also riddled with signs of decay. Crumbling buildings, broken windows, and a pervasive sense of neglect. He quickly learned the true extent of redemption's troubles. Silas had not only drained the town's resources, but had also left it deeply in debt. The bank was practically empty, the infrastructure was crumbling, and the town's charter was in jeopardy. To make matters worse, Silas had sabotaged several key systems before leaving, ensuring that redemption would face immediate challenges. The water supply was contaminated, the telegraph lines were cut, and the town's only doctor had mysteriously disappeared. Leo realized that he hadn't just won a town, he had inherited a disaster. He also discovered that Silas had powerful allies outside of redemption, individuals and organizations who had a vested interest in the town's resources and were not pleased with the change in ownership. Leo knew that Silas wouldn't go down without a fight, and that he would use every dirty trick in the book to reclaim what he had lost. The game had just begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. Despite the daunting challenges, Leo didn't back down. He started by gathering the townsfolk, explaining the situation, and asking for their help. He knew he couldn't rebuild redemption alone. He appointed a council, made up of honest and capable individuals. Sarah, the strong-willed owner of the general store, Jedediah, the grizzled but wise old rancher, and Maria, a young, educated woman who had returned to redemption after her father's death. Together, they began to tackle the town's problems one by one. Leo used his own money to repair the water supply, hiring a team of engineers to clean the well and install a new filtration system. He offered loans to struggling businesses, giving them a chance to get back on their feet. He reopened the schoolhouse, hiring a new teacher and providing books and supplies for the children. But progress was slow and difficult. Silas's loyalists, led by Brick and Worm, continued to sabotage Leo's efforts. They spread rumors, intimidated townsfolk, and even resorted to violence. One night, the schoolhouse was set on fire, a clear message that Silas wasn't giving up. Leo knew he had to confront Silas's lingering influence head-on. He began investigating Silas's past dealings, uncovering a web of corruption and deceit that reached far beyond redemption. He discovered that Silas had been working with a powerful mining company, promising them access to valuable mineral deposits beneath the town. This mining company was willing to do anything to get their hands on redemption, and they saw Leo as a major obstacle. The threats against Leo and the townsfolk escalated, making it clear that Silas and his allies were playing for keeps. The attacks became more frequent and more personal. Sarah's general store was vandalized, Jedediah's cattle were stolen, and Maria received threatening letters, warning her to leave redemption or face the consequences. Even Leo wasn't immune. He survived an ambush on the road, escaping with only a minor injury, but the message was clear. Silas and his allies wanted him gone. Leo realized that he couldn't protect the town alone. He needed to find a way to expose Silas and his mining company, to reveal their true intentions and rally the townsfolk against them. He started gathering evidence, piecing together the puzzle of Silas's corrupt dealings. He discovered that Silas had been falsifying documents, manipulating land surveys, and bribing government officials to ensure the mining company's access to Redemption's resources. He also learned that the mining company planned to displace the townsfolk, turning Redemption into a company town, stripping it of its identity and independence. Armed with this information, Leo decided to take a gamble. He sent a message to Silas, challenging him to a public debate, a chance to clear his name and address the town's concerns. Silas, confident in his ability to manipulate the crowd, accepted the challenge. The debate was set to take place in the town square, the very place where Leo had first promised to rebuild Redemption. The entire town turned out, their faces a mixture of hope and apprehension. They knew that this debate could determine the fate of their town, and that lucky Leo was their only hope against the forces that threatened to destroy them. The stage was set for a final showdown. The day of the debate arrived, hot and dusty. The town square was packed, the air thick with tension. Leo stood on one side of the stage, his face calm and resolute. Silas stood opposite him, flanked by Brick and a slick-looking representative from the mining company, a man named Mr. Harding. Silas started the debate with a series of lies and distortions, painting Leo as an outsider, a meddler who was disrupting the town's natural order. He claimed that the mining company was offering Redemption a chance at prosperity, a way to revive its dying economy. Leo, however, was prepared. He presented his evidence, methodically dismantling Silas's lies. He revealed the falsified documents, the manipulated land surveys, and the bribes to government officials. He showed the townsfolk the mining company's plans to displace them, to turn their homes into a wasteland. Mr. Harding tried to interrupt, to discredit Leo's evidence, but Leo stood his ground, his voice ringing with conviction. He appealed to the townsfolk's sense of justice, their love for their home, their desire for a better future. The crowd listened intently, their faces etched with a mixture of anger and disbelief. As Leo spoke, a shift began to occur. The townsfolk, who had once been divided and fearful, began to unite, their shared sense of outrage overcoming their doubts. Silas, realizing that he was losing control of the situation, grew desperate. He signaled to Brick, who stepped forward, brandishing a weapon. The crowd gasped, fear once again gripping their hearts. But before Brick could act, a voice rang out from the crowd. Enough! It was Sarah, her face flushed with anger, her eyes blazing with defiance. We won't let you do this anymore, Silas. Sarah's defiance sparked a chain reaction. Other townsfolk joined her, standing up to Brick and Silas. Jedediah stepped forward, his shotgun held firmly in his hands. Maria began shouting, reminding everyone of Silas's past crimes and the mining company's ruthless intentions. The crowd surged forward, surrounding Silas and his men. Brick tried to fight back, but he was quickly overwhelmed. Silas, his face pale with fear, tried to escape, but he was blocked by Leo. It's over, Silas, Leo said, his voice calm but firm. Your lies have been exposed. Your reign of terror is finished. Silas spat at Leo's feet, his eyes filled with hatred. You may have won this battle, "Gambler," he snarled. "But the war is far from over. The mining company will never let you keep this town." Just then, a group of armed men rode into the town square, their faces grim and determined. They were led by Mr. Harding, who pointed a gun at Leo. "This town belongs to us now," Harding declared. "Anyone who stands in our way will pay the price." The townsfolk gasped, their newfound courage wavering. The odds were stacked against them. They were just ordinary people, facing a well-equipped and ruthless enemy. But Leo refused to back down. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Harding. "You may have the guns, Harding," Leo said, his voice unwavering. "But we have something you don't have. We have each other. And we're not afraid to fight for our home." With that, Leo drew his own weapon, a silver-plated revolver that he had kept hidden beneath his coat. The final showdown had begun. The first shot rang out, shattering the tense silence. The fight for redemption had begun. Leo, despite being outnumbered, was a skilled marksman. He quickly took cover behind the stage, returning fire with deadly accuracy. The townsfolk, inspired by his courage, joined the fight, using whatever weapons they could find, hunting rifles, shotguns, even rocks and bottles. Sarah led a group of townsfolk, flanking the mining company's men, using their knowledge of the town's back alleys and secret passages to their advantage. Jedediah, with his trusty shotgun, provided covering fire, keeping the enemy pinned down. Maria organized a makeshift medical station, tending to the wounded. The battle raged through the town square, the air filled with gunfire and the cries of the wounded. Leo, despite the chaos, remained focused, his eyes scanning the battlefield, looking for an opportunity to turn the tide. He noticed that Harding was positioned near the edge of the square, directing his men. If he could take Harding out, it would cripple the mining company's attack. Leo took a deep breath, aimed carefully, and fired. The bullet struck Harding in the arm, sending his weapon flying. Harding cried out in pain, clutching his injured limb. Leo seized the opportunity, charging towards Harding, his revolver drawn. As Leo approached, Harding pulled out a hidden knife, lunging at Leo. Leo dodged the attack, grabbing Harding's wrist and disarming him. He then struck Harding with the butt of his revolver, knocking him unconscious. With Harding out of the picture, the mining company's attack began to falter. The townsfolk, emboldened by Leo's victory, pressed their advantage, forcing the enemy to retreat. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. Redemption had a fighting chance. The remaining mining company men, seeing their leader defeated and their attack faltering, began to retreat, abandoning their weapons and fleeing into the surrounding hills. The townsfolk, exhausted but triumphant, cheered as they watched their enemies disappear. But Leo knew that the fight wasn't truly over. Silas was still out there, and he wouldn't give up so easily. Leo gathered a small group of townsfolk, including Sarah and Jedediah, and set out to find Silas. They tracked him to an abandoned mine shaft on the outskirts of town, a place where Silas had often conducted his shady dealings. Leo and his group cautiously entered the mine, their weapons drawn. The mine was dark and treacherous, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. They moved slowly, carefully, listening for any sign of Silas. Suddenly, a shot rang out, narrowly missing Leo. Silas emerged from the shadows, his face contorted with rage. "You may have defeated Harding," he shouted, "but you'll never defeat me. This town is mine, and I'll die before I let you take it from me." Silas fired again, forcing Leo and his group to take cover. A fierce gunfight erupted in the narrow confines of the mine shaft. Leo, using his skills as a gambler and his knowledge of Silas's weaknesses, managed to gain the upper hand. He cornered Silas, disarming him and forcing him to surrender. As Leo stood over Silas, he felt a surge of anger, a desire to punish him for all the pain and suffering he had caused. But he resisted the temptation, knowing that revenge wouldn't bring redemption back from the brink. "It's over, Silas," Leo said, his voice filled with weariness. "You're finished." With Silas captured, Leo returned to redemption, bringing the defeated mayor with him. The townsfolk greeted them with cheers, their faces filled with relief and gratitude. They had faced their fears, stood up to their oppressors, and won. Leo addressed the crowd, thanking them for their courage and their unwavering support. He announced that Silas would be handed over to the authorities to face justice for his crimes. He also declared that the mining company's plans for redemption were officially dead. The townsfolk celebrated their victory, but Leo knew that there was still much work to be done. Redemption was still in ruins, its economy shattered, its spirit wounded. But he also knew that the town had something it hadn't had before: hope. He appointed Sarah as the new mayor, recognizing her strength, her intelligence, and her unwavering commitment to the town. He entrusted Jedediah with the task of rebuilding the town's infrastructure, knowing that his wisdom and experience would be invaluable. He asked Maria to continue her work in education, ensuring that the children of Redemption would have a bright future. Leo knew that he couldn't stay in Redemption forever. He was a gambler, a wanderer, a man who thrived on risk and adventure. But he also knew that he had made a difference in this forgotten town, that he had helped to give its people a second chance. He decided to leave Redemption in the hands of its people, confident that they would rebuild their town and create a better future for themselves. He packed his bags, saddled his horse, and prepared to ride off into the sunset, leaving behind the town he had won in a poker game and the people he had helped to save. But before he left, he made one last promise to himself. He would never forget Redemption. As Leo prepared to leave, Sarah approached him, her face etched with gratitude. "Thank you, Leo," she said, her voice sincere. "You saved our town. You gave us hope when we had none." Leo smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "You saved yourselves, Sarah," he replied. "I just gave you a little push." Jedediah also came to say goodbye, offering Leo a firm handshake. "You're a good man, Leo," he said, "even if you were a gambler." Leo chuckled. "And you're a good rancher, Jedediah, even if you were a little stubborn." Maria presented Leo with a small, hand-carved wooden horse, a symbol of Redemption's resilience and its newfound hope. "Thank you for believing in us, Leo," she said. "We won't let you down." Leo accepted the gift, his heart touched by their kindness. He knew that he was leaving Redemption in good hands, that the town was finally on the path to recovery. He mounted his horse, took one last look at the town square, and then turned his horse towards the setting sun. As he rode away, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment. He had come to Redemption as a gambler, seeking a high-stakes game. But he was leaving as something more, a hero. However, as he rode, he thought about Sarah, Jedediah, and Maria. He knew that even with Silas gone and the mining company defeated, they would face hardship. He briefly considered staying, but shook his head. He wasn't a leader. He was a gambler. Suddenly, he stopped his horse. He looked back at Redemption, at the faint lights flickering in the windows of the town. He looked down at the reins in his hands, then at the setting sun. He sighed and turned his horse around. He had one more gamble to make, and this time, the stakes were his own future. The sun was beginning to rise as Leo rode back into Redemption. The townsfolk, seeing him return, greeted him with a mixture of surprise and joy. Sarah rushed to meet him, her face beaming. "Leo, what are you doing back?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I thought you were leaving." Leo dismounted his horse, a sheepish grin on his face. "I was," he admitted. "But then I realized, I'm not a very good gambler, am I?" Sarah raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Leo explained, "that I keep betting on the wrong things. I thought I wanted to wander, to chase the next big game. But what I really wanted was to make a difference." He looked around at the townsfolk, their faces filled with hope and determination. "You all showed me that," he said, his voice sincere. "You showed me that there's more to life than winning. There's also fighting for what's right and helping others in need." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "So you're staying?" Leo nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I'm staying," he said, "but not as your owner. I'm staying as your neighbor, your friend, well, whatever you need me to be." The townsfolk cheered, their hearts filled with gratitude. They knew that Leo's decision to stay was a testament to their resilience, their courage, and their unwavering spirit. They had not only saved their town, they had also saved a soul. Leo settled into a small cabin on the outskirts of town, working alongside the townsfolk to rebuild Redemption. He used his skills and his resources to help them restore their economy, improve their infrastructure, and create a brighter future for their children. He even learned to enjoy the simple things in life: the satisfaction of hard work, the companionship of good friends, and the quiet beauty of the western landscape. He was still a gambler at heart, but his stakes had changed. Now, he was gambling on the future of Redemption. And for the first time in his life, he knew that he was holding a winning hand. Years passed, and Redemption slowly but surely began to thrive. The schoolhouse was rebuilt, bigger and better than before, filled with the laughter of children learning and growing. The general store prospered, stocked with goods from all over the West. The cattle ranches flourished, their herds grazing on the lush green pastures. Sarah proved to be an excellent mayor, leading the town with wisdom and compassion. Jedediah oversaw the construction of new roads and bridges, connecting Redemption to the outside world. Maria continued to inspire the young people of Redemption, instilling in them a love of learning and a sense of civic duty. Leo, though he never sought power or recognition, became a beloved figure in the town. He used his skills as a gambler to help the townsfolk make smart investments, ensuring their financial security. He taught the children how to play poker, not for the money, but for the strategy and the skill. He even started a small lending library in his cabin, sharing his love of books and knowledge with anyone who was interested. Redemption became known throughout the West as a town of hope and second chances, a place where anyone could start over and build a better life. People came from far and wide, drawn by the promise of opportunity and the spirit of community. The Golden Gulch Saloon, once a symbol of despair, became a place of celebration, filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. The town square, once dusty and deserted, became a vibrant hub of activity, where people gathered to trade, to socialize, and to celebrate their shared success. And so, Redemption, the town that had once been on the brink of oblivion, rose from the ashes, transformed by the courage of its people, the wisdom of its leaders, and the unlikely heroism of a notorious gambler named Lucky Leo. The end.